afternoon, welcome to the UK Column News. It is the 3rd of September 2014 and it's just gone 1 o'clock. Myself, Louise Collins, and Brian Gerrish are here in the studio with Nick behind the controls as Mike's taking the day off or taking it easy.
Well, we can't say that. He's working very hard elsewhere.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
Asher.
Before we do that, I was just going to say, before we just get going there, the weather reports are mainly sunshine, so it seems that we're not doing too badly. Presumably the chemtrailing was postponed in order to give world leaders the best possible sunshine in South Wales.
Yeah. We failed to say we've got David Scott on Skype. Will be joining us in a little bit with a bit more of an update on Robert. But we're going to kick off straight away now with Asher. Last night, all charges were dropped against Brett and Nagme, and they were freed from their jail cells in Spain. Then are now apparently on their way to Malaga to be reunited with Asher. The Photon Beam Therapy Hospital has confirmed that they are able to treat Asher, and the Southampton-based oncologist mentioned in the video Brett made, Dr. Gary Nichol, who we'll have a picture up soon, said that Asher requires a further 2 weeks more of chemo treatment before he can be treated in Prague. Asher's mum has said she just wants to be reunited with her son, obviously. But this morning I called Southampton Hospital to find out what action they're going to be taking against the doctors that threatened Brett with a care order and phoned the police, but nobody at this moment has come back to me. But I did find this statement from the BBC. The statement read, Mrs. King did take certain steps to safeguard the health for Asher. For example, it appears they had ordered specialist foods for care for Asher and had managed to change the food pump using their car battery. Asher King's legal status is Portsmouth City Council made the request for a temporary wardship order on the 29th of August, following a request from Southampton General Hospital and Hampshire Constabulary, while Asher's whereabouts were unknown. The order specifically relates to Asher's medical care and require him to be taken to a nearest hospital. Following a hearing on the 2nd of September, the case was adjourned to allow the parents to put forward their proposals for Asher's treatment. He still does remain a ward of court, and no decision about Asher's future can be taken without the court's approval. Hampshire Police Commissioner Simon Hayes has said the force has been correct to pursue the arrest warrant. That's where we are at the moment.
So we've got a youngster needing medical treatment. We can activate the whole of the NHS. We can activate Britain's police. We can pursue them overseas.
Yep.
We can integrate with Spanish police to track this couple. We can put them in prison.
We can leave this little boy without his parents after having major operations, left in a hospital in a foreign country with no one around him.
Right. So we can do all of that. We can lock up Melanie Shaw, child abuse victim, in a prison, locked up in a prison. Still no evidence produced against her. And of course, we're just about to move on to Robert Green. What's he been up to? Well, he's been trying to protect youngsters. He can be pursued. He can be locked up in prison. It's pretty serious what is going on, because we're now starting to see the state simply say, we can do as we wish. You think you are there to look after your children. We don't agree. The NHS is going to be in control. Social services are going to be in control. The police are going to be in control. This is a very, very serious situation. And really, we're watching now the slide into a total dictatorship occurring over a matter of months. Can we stop it? Of course we can. It requires millions of people to do really what they've just done around this little boy. So we've suddenly seen the dirty deed going from being all quite happily covered behind closed doors to the public becoming aware. When enough public shout all of a sudden there's backpedaling. So if we just bring up Robert, by my calculation, he's now spent 106 days under house arrest at his home in Warrington. And remember, he's got to report to the police every day. He's unsure of the exact charges against him. And at the moment, he looks as though he's going to be under house arrest. This is England we're talking about for overseas viewers and listeners. So he's going to be under house arrest in England at the whim of the Alex Salmond junta until his trial, which is sometime in January 2015. Is he a murderer? No. Is he a serious child abuser? No. Has he committed treason? No. What is he trying to do? Protect children. So probably over to you, David. Have we got you there online? You should have.
Yes.
Hi, David.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
We're very good. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. I've thoroughly enjoyed watching the developments over the Asher King case over the weekend. It's been remarkable how one YouTube video, one interview with a loving grandmother, and the entire state apparatus has gone into a screeching reverse, and has had to admit, however very, very grudgingly, that all of the decisions they made relating to Asher were imbecilic. And they're having to slowly unpick it all, and it just shows what a bit of people power can actually do. And it illustrates that there are still things that we can do to influence what our wise overlords are wanting to do to us. The Asher King case, however, should be remembered, is one of the most egregious cases, one of the most obvious and severe cases, but similar things are happening day in, day out. I know from one charity, the Times Trust, who deal with young people with ME, which is a neurological disease, where the NHS try to characterise it as a mental illness, as a belief system, and as a result come forward with inappropriate treatments. When those treatments start to make the children worse and their parents withdraw them from treatment, they're now being faced with child protection hearings. And the Times Trust have had to fight over 120 wrongful child protection hearings against loving parents who are only doing the best to resist inappropriate treatment and to care for their children. And of those 120 plus cases, not one has been proven to have any merit. So it's not just the Asher King case, it's happening across the country.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So how is Robert?
Robert's very well. He's in excellent spirits. As far as I can tell, he's never off the phone. He seems to be getting very busy. We'll need to have a whip round and get him a secretary. There's obviously a lot happening. He's in contact with a lot of people, and partly because of that, he's really in excellent spirits and excellent form. His health is also improving since he's been out of prison. He had a lot of chest pain when he was in prison, which seemed to ultimately be diagnosed as a form of angina. And he's had a heart condition since his youth. That seems to have gone away, as far as I know, and he's feeling much better.
That's really good, David. I'll just say that Robert's illness when he was in prison was of great concern to us, and I know it was you and many, many other people. And it's really brought home this issue that when people go into prison, where ultimately the state is there to care for them. I mean, those people, once they're in prison, are totally vulnerable. So the state takes on the responsibility, okay, to keep them in prison for their sentence. But the state has also got a parallel responsibility to look after the health of those people. And we've seen this with Robert, of course. When he started to get his chest pains, certain amount of pressure necessary before he got his checkup. It did arrive, but it took a bit of pressure, I understand. And then, of course, we've got Melanie Shaw, child abuse victim in the Sodexo prison in Peterborough. Aside from Sodexo simply withdrawing her Valium, which she'd been on for many years, in order to have a normal life after the abuse she'd suffered, she also went into prison with a very severe leg ulcer, which she was actually successfully treating with her own GP. And I understand that they were using Manuka honey to do this. So great progress by Melanie in healing her leg. When she goes into prison, what do the prison authorities do? No treatment for that leg ulcer. So we're seeing some very, very nasty, I'm going to say vicious activity by the state. Your punishment is to be locked up. Your punishment isn't to be denied NHS medication and to be allowed to become ill as a result of your incarceration.
Kind of goes the other way, because when people aren't on medication, and I have said this before, when people aren't on medication, they are getting forcibly medicated with drugs in some cases, and then the people who do actually have a long-standing course of medicines end up being denied it. It's really just to play with their heads, from what I can see.
playing with their heads, but also we're seeing something sinister happen, whether it's in England, Wales or Scotland, common sense disappearing out of the window and reality 180 degrees on its head. So, David, there's been some recent news about legal aid for Robert, a sudden reversal in fortune. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I only know pretty much what you know. The Legal Aid Board have been less than enormously helpful over the piece. Initially, they were granting legal aid for a solicitor, for junior counsel, and we were refusing senior counsel. I wrote to them about this. Robert was writing from jail daily, outlining the case of why he needed senior counsel, of what he was up against, and the nature of the defence he needed. When I wrote to the head of the Scottish Legal Aid Board, I did get a response, and he seemed to be saying that there was no application made for senior counsel, despite Robert's daily letters. I understand that they then responded to a letter from Robert's MP and sought to put most of the blame for the lack of legal aid onto Robert's solicitor. They then contacted Robert's solicitor and said that there was no legal aid now available at all due to Robert being sufficiently well off that he didn't require it, something that was news to Robert. And within a day and a couple of phone calls from Robert, this situation had been entirely reversed. And there was at least the suggestion that full legal aid for junior and senior counsel would be granted. But it was depending on further applications being made by Robert's solicitor. So we're back to the point where legal aid appears to be on offer, but it's not yet been formally granted. So this could still go either way.
Can I just ask, what about challenging his bail conditions? Is anything happening with regards to that?
I don't think anything has happened just yet on that. The bail conditions described by the judge in Aberdeen as somewhat draconian, they're still in force, and there seems to be a little bit of movement. There's been an indication that if Robert wants a holiday, he will be allowed to leave his hometown for 2 weeks with permission and get a vacation somewhere. So there's a little bit of movement, but nothing formally has been done to vary those conditions, so they're still in force at the moment.
Right. Okay, thanks.
There isn't. Well, is there any other precedent like this for some that you know of, David, for somebody to be locked up in their house, reporting to the police, 100 and whatever it is, 6 days so far, and it could continue through to January 2015? Has this ever happened in Scotland itself, do you know?
Well, not as far as I'm aware. And almost every turn with the Robert Greene case, you come up against a situation where this is unprecedented. The pursuit of someone so heavily, the fact he was locked up for 96 days without a trial on what eventually was reduced to simply the breach of a non-harassment order, that's completely without precedent. We don't lock up people for 96 days in Scotland for breach of a non-harassment order. We don't have any form of house arrest for this sort of length of time. We don't see bail conditions. And he wouldn't have got bail without those conditions. The only reason the conditions are so severe is to leave the Crown, to leave the judiciary with no means of objecting to bail. Otherwise, he would still be in HMP Perth. The degree to which he has been subjected to everything that the law can throw at him has been most unusual all the way down the line. Really quite exceptional. And one of the things, the question I tried to ask Kenny McCaskill in Perth back in April about the rule of law in Scotland was whether the law is applied equally to all parties in Scotland, whether everyone is equal under the law. Because we're seeing cases where people who are employed by the Scottish Legal Aid Board or people who are employed by the Crown Office are committing crimes and serious crimes, some crimes involving sexual misconduct, crimes involving violence, and either it's not in the public interest to prosecute and they get essentially let off, or there is a fiscal administrative justice, which is a warning or a small fine, or we're getting cases where the people have a community service order and they have to do some work in the community. They're not getting jail time. And Robert, on remand for 96 days for something that didn't involve any violence, he's always been an entirely peaceful man, is without precedent.
We're actually getting into the heart of the matter here. We're talking about the loss of personal liberty. We're talking about the inability of the state, albeit in Scotland, to protect children from abusers. We're talking about the police failing to do their job and investigate crimes. These are very, very serious subjects, and in fact, it's going to be the baseline through our news programme today. All of this effort to stop Robert revealing the truth about the abuse of Holly Greig. What do you think that Robert's campaign, the Holly Greig campaign itself, has done some damage to Alex Salmond and possibly his independence campaign?
It's very difficult to say that it has, because it's been so thoroughly kept quiet. The mainstream press, particularly in Scotland, won't touch this. The Glasgow Herald did an absolutely shocking hit piece, quite a disgraceful piece of journalism on the case, to try and discredit the case and try and discredit Holly and her mother and Robert. And it was quite obviously a whole series of skewed news. More or less every other paper, with the single exception maybe the Press and Journal, have reported a little bit, have avoided this entirely, partially due to the threats which were coming out from Elise Angelini and her law firm, thanks to government funding for that law firm. The Scottish legal press are the only people who have actually had the courage to report this, but the Scottish legal press, the Firm and the Drum and magazines like this, are only read by legal insiders. They're not read by the public at large. So most people would be unaware of the Holly Greig case, of Alex Salmond's role in it, and the unhelpful attitude of Kenny McCaskill and what it points to in terms of what we might expect in an independent Scotland. Because if we're not in a country that's governed by the rule of law, if we're seeing the SNP administration move us further away from a country that's being governed by the rule of law, then we're in big trouble. And there's a lot of indication that that's the case.
Right. Well, thank you very much for that. Just as a final comment, what do you think people should be doing for Robert? What can we do to help improve his situation and, of course, ultimately get justice for Holly Greig?
Firstly, I don't think it's all over at the legal aid situation. And one positive phone call doesn't actually cover the whole area. The person most directly responsible is Kingsley Thomas at the Scottish Legal Aid Board. I think people should write to him and say that Robert needs both solicitor and junior counsel and senior counsel, because he's up against the whole of the Scottish state. He's going to have to call in his own defence the current Lord Advocate of Scotland, the previous Lord Advocate of Scotland, the previous fiscal in Aberdeen. Very, very heavyweight political and legal figures. It's only right and proper that he should have senior counsel to represent him in carrying out that defence. So I think the first thing is to keep writing to the Scottish Legal Aid Board until there is a piece of paper that confirms that Robert will have full legal aid for the duration of the trial. The second thing is to keep asking questions. There are a lot of very uncertain areas in this. There's a lot of lies being told. There's a lot of half-truths being told. So keep asking questions. Keep asking members of Parliament to ask questions, and keep the case in the public eye and in very much to the top of the list in legal circles. It will only help Robert if the legal officials in Scotland are aware that there's a lot of people watching the case, reporting on the case, and watching what their conduct is, it will perhaps improve it.
Brilliant.
Can I just say there's been a lot of comments about your chairs. Our members are liking your chairs, David. So
they're certainly watching you speak. Thank you very much for giving us yet another excellent synopsis of what's happening around Robert, and thank you for all you're doing for him. We, of course, will continue to help keep Robert Greene and Holly Greig and the whole appalling case in the public spotlight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Well, if we move on a bit, can we trust Britain's police? I'm afraid to say we don't think so. We know there are many good men and women out on the streets as policemen and women. What's happening at the top of the tree, we're not so sure about. And an article from the BBC here, ex-Chief Constable Mike Hedges from Rotherham says, well, he was unaware of any child sex abuse going on. His job was to be the man in charge, obviously, finger on a pulse, men and women out on the streets knowing what's going on. But no, he was unaware that there was any naughtiness going on with children at all.
So he was also then, when Jimmy Savile was getting up to no good all around that area as well, he would have been in charge then as well, I do believe.
Quite possibly, and we do see certain police forces coming back into the picture each time. No apology from UK Column for repeating this, which we showed yesterday. This was the information which a very kind researcher alerted us to from the National Archives, where we see that records in relation to, this is the Nottingham County Borough Children's Homes, have been closed for 81 years. And it also included Melanie Shaw and Mickey Summers' Beechwood Residential Nursery, lovely title there, closed for a mere 75 years. Why would you need to close these cases? Well, there can only be one reason, and that is to bury the facts as to what was going on, the abuse of children. And Melanie Shaw, of course, has reported that children were effectively murdered at Beechwood. Here we see what the government does, which is to close down the records so that they are taken away from public eyes. Now, let's remember, this is the same government, of course, that at the moment is producing this incredible situation of so-called security measures in Newport and Cardiff around the NATO summit. And credit to Wales Online, they've produced a brilliant summary here. We've got V-22 Osprey helicopters, we've got 9,500 police officers, we've got military vehicles, we've got NATO helicopters, we've got 6 warships in the bay, including Latvian mine hunters. We've got massive physical controls for the general public. We've got armed police and security guys on the ground. This is absolutely extraordinary. If we just think about the cost, and of course nobody at the moment is talking about the cost, we are into hundreds of millions, if not billions of pounds. Police, armoured vehicles, military, RAF, foreign troops, Navy, to protect these leaders from what? What are we actually talking about?
I mean, if they need this amount of security, who voted? These people must have liked them to put them into power. It beggars belief. I know, but last
You're
time
stuttering
said,
as well. We've now got to the point where the news is around us is just so incredible. So let's pull it apart a bit more. Let's just have a look at another one from Wales Online. Here we are, NATO Summit 2014. Cardiff Ring of Steel, barriers used to stop car bombs. Now, great steel barriers and gateways for the public. What an insult to the average man and woman on the streets in Cardiff. But of course, it's all been softened, because if they paint it a nice, happy yellow colour, that's okay then.
Yeah.
But something I've been interested in is that the papers have been remarkably shy at showing you the actual hotel itself. Here we are, the Celtic Manor Resort Hotel. It's up on a hill as you approach it by the M4 coming into Wales. It's got a very Germanic look about it. I'm sure Prince Charles would love it. It's been used for other events, the Riders' Cup here, but at the moment nobody seems to want to show us this hotel. But credit to The Guardian, because The Guardian decided they'd look away from the hotel itself. And they've got an article here, NATO Summit, Newport locals unimpressed as world leaders arrive in Wales. And they'd added some pretty good comments here. I'll just read a little bit. Half a mile and what felt like a world away at the Grey shopping precinct on the Ringland estate, Roma McElroy was stacking the shelves of her fruit and veg shop, none too impressed that a NATO summit is about to begin on the doorstep. What's happening over the hill, nothing to do with us. It's causing disruption and worry. I can't think that Obama will be coming anywhere near here. It won't bring any good. And the butcher next door, Sean, it's like the Ryder Cup. They said it would put us on the map and boost business, but people just forgot about us. So this is the other side of the story. Were these people consulted? Were the people of Wales or England or Scotland consulted? No, David Cameron just clicked his fingers and said, we're going to have the biggest show on earth. It's called the NATO Pantomime in South Wales 2014. And if you happen to live there, you're going to have to walk through steel barriers.
Shocking.
So, well, of course, Mike Robinson picked this one up. Here's the Prime Minister. He was so excited that he was tweeting and twittering that he couldn't wait to welcome the world to Newport. He was so excited about his little NATO summit, he had to get out there and do a little bit of twitting. Well, it's appropriate for the man in question.
Special friends.
Well, here they are. Let's just have a look at the men who are creating the Cardiff NATO military pantomime. David Cameron, of course. This is what the man is really like on the beach. And let's not forget he was helping to plan this NATO meeting from the beach. And then he got worried about terrorism, so he broke away from the beach for a bit. But we'll bring in his colleague. Here's Sir John Sawyers. Of course, there was a bit of an intelligence boob, I think is the correct expression, because his wife posted pictures of him in his fit body on the beach and also pictures of their flat and children, I think. So if we really analyse who are the men who've got the power to move billions of pounds of money to bring foreign military into Britain's shores, to put armed police on the streets, to pen Welsh people up in the most appalling physical constraints in Cardiff, well, those are the two of the key men that we've shown you on screen. But we're going to have to make a pretty serious announcement because here we've got the Home Office. And we decided this morning that we needed to speak to the Home Office because we had questions over the uniform that police have been wearing in order to police this NATO summit. And we'll come on to this. But in calling the Home Office through to their media team, we wanted to put some serious questions to them about the dress of the police. We had the misfortune to speak to a senior press officer called Emma.
We spoke to her before, haven't we?
We have spoken to her before, but today Emma told us that essentially she answers all questions put to the Home Office. And she told us straight away that the Home Office didn't answer questions about police uniform. We should put that to the police. We asked very nicely that Emma consulted somebody in the Home Office because we wanted a Home Office response. But Emma, unbelievably sure of herself, said no, she was the person that answered on behalf of the Home Office and we should take advice from her in order to go back to the police. The conversation became even more remarkable. We asked what she actually knew about the subject we were inquiring about, to which she said, well, she had a rough idea. But I'm sorry to say that if you think that Theresa May is in charge of the Home Office, she's apparently been replaced by a young upstart called Emma, and we'll have more on that. But if we come back to Theresa May, this is the serious stuff, because on the Home Office we've got threat level from international terrorism has been increased. And I'm just going to bring this in. This isn't a joke, but we believe that the glowing picture of Theresa May is indicative that this lady is now beginning to believe her own reality. Obviously, recent photos of her show that she's not the glamour puss that she would like to think she is. But have we now got to the situation where these leaders have simply lost reality? Well, let's have a look at what she has to say. This is the meat of the website information. So the threat level from international terrorism has gone from substantial to severe, but there's no intelligence to suggest that one is imminent, that an attack is imminent. So we just like to say, well, what is the evidence behind any of this? Has any member of the public actually seen any serious evidence as to what's going on? If we can just pop that one back on, Nick, thank you very much. We've also got this. The increase in the threat level is related to developments in Syria and Iraq, where terrorist groups, notice they're unspecified, are planning attacks against the West. They know they're planning attacks. Apparently, they know that they're not imminent, but they can't actually give any detail about who these people are. And of course, this is the reality of it, because what's given away in this paragraph is that here we've got the government and the Home Office boasting that they've already taken steps to amend our powers. Well, they don't mean powers of the public. They mean here is the government taking more powers to itself and increasing its capability to dictate what's going to happen in Britain. And of course, we're now seeing a Stasi system on the streets in Cardiff and Newport. Is that a test run for the rest of UK?
So.
Here we are, the happy video. We may be placing ourselves at risk of being arrested by the Met Police because a little while ago, of course, they came up with this statement: viewing, downloading or disseminating this video might be an offence under the Terrorism Act 2008. We dared to ask why. They couldn't tell us. But remember, of course, Met Police tied into security, helping to determine the threats against Britain. Well, we just like to point out that the Daily Mail clearly sailing close to the wind, because they've also been viewing, downloading and disseminating videos relating to so-called terrorist offences. But I think I'm correct in saying we're still not sure whether any of these videos are real.
We're not sure yet, no.
But we've spent a few billion in response.
Indeed, and I think Mike will probably be looking into it, the videos a little bit more further, especially this latest supposed one of Steven Sotloff. So moving on, I found this article in the Mail today. Old Barry has caused uproar with the American press and journalists when leaving for his trip to Wales by ignoring journalists and not making any statement about the so-called latest beheading of American journalist Steven Sotloff. 2 weeks ago, he was criticised for being on the golf course literally minutes after his speech about the James Foley video. So, yeah, here are the photographs of him quickly jumping on his helicopter to head off to Wales. And here was the waiting press outside the White House who were waiting for a statement from Obama, and it never came. It never came. And actually one of the, I think a CNN anchor woman came out and said he says nothing while our colleagues are out there being murdered. And he can't even spare 5 minutes to talk to us and make any statement.
So British and American governments now suddenly become extremely shy of the videos that, of course, David Cameron in particular, adamant that there had to be a substantial reaction to stop world terrorism. Now all of a sudden it's gone rather wobbly on whether these videos are real, what they're designed to. And President Obama simply doesn't want to talk to the American press.
Well, his handlers haven't told him what to say, probably.
Probably. We'd like to thank John for alerting us to this one. Here's the good old BBC, straight into the propaganda. So here we've got beheading. Obama has stood up now and he's warning the Islamic State. You better stop chopping off people's heads, otherwise we're going to deal with you. But this was the other part. Thank you for sending this in, because we've got Saudi Arabia here tied into the so-called Axis against terror, chopping off the heads of 4 drug traffickers. So it's very difficult to know what the law is at the moment and who's on which side. But it does seem to the UK column that if we watch the propaganda coming out of the British government at the moment, do we trust them? We don't. And just so that we don't forget the Metropolitan Police, here's what they said. Could be an offence under the Terrorism Act. We asked them what, and all of a sudden they said, well, we just thought it was being helpful. So newspeak, if we want to call it that. But if we don't know what the law is in relation to terrorism, how can we actually judge any other country? This is the reality of it. Well, we had another viewer who flagged up this gentleman. This is the man in charge of policing, Chris Armitt, if I've pronounced that correctly. Assistant Chief Constable from Merseyside. And it's very interesting to have a look through his police career. What we were interested in really was the second part, if we highlight a bit of it. Well, he's boasting of his expertise to look after big events involving terrorism and large numbers of units. He's done the Matthew Street Festival. He's done the Labour Party annual conference. He's done La Machine Parade and Sea Odyssey Weekend. So these are pretty dangerous gatherings. Liverpool New Year, probably the most dangerous, of course, is Liverpool New Year's Eve celebrations. But if you notice under that, he's also saying, well, I've worked in Cyprus, Estonia and Germany, providing advice and guidance to local authorities on policing and public order. So we've got Britain's police who can't track down paedophiles at high level, but they can travel overseas to advise other countries on how to police properly.
It's good, isn't it? They're amazing. Amazing people. Amazing people.
But UK column, as usual, has seen something which the mainstream press have not picked up on. This is part of the Daily Mail. Credit to the Daily Mail. They've got a fantastic selection of pictures. So do go to the Mail and have a read of this article. What we were interested in here in the first place was that these gentlemen are wearing blue caps, blue baseball caps. So they've got police written on those in English and Welsh. But we noticed that they also had a stylised Union Jack on their uniform, which we felt was an identifier that these were actually British police.
Yeah.
They are police, even though they look as though they're members of special forces. Perhaps that's what they're pretending to be.
This is what you phoned Emma about, was it?
Well, we phoned the Home Office about this because we're interested to know who had the authority to actually change the dress of Britain's police to put these blue caps on. Well, of course, Emma, who's now running the Home Office, didn't know. We eventually spoke to ACPO. They didn't know. We spoke to the Met Police. They didn't know either, but they were both kind enough to put us through to the press team for policing, NATO policing, in fact. And what we were told was that the blue caps were because the police were undertaking a NATO policing role. And so if I just bring the question up on the screen for you, we want to know who actually authorised a change in the dress of Britain's police. And we want to know what this signifies. Does this signify that these supposedly civilian police are now under the control of NATO, a military organisation? These are very serious constitutional issues. And of course, the mainstream press, the Telegraph, the Mail, even Guardian, completely missed the point. Who is actually running security in South Wales? Is it actually the case that security is now being run as a military operation where we have foreign military involved in the process?
Well, I reckon it's Emma's running it, and I reckon Emma's chosen the caps.
You could be right.
I reckon she's doing it.
You could be right. Well, of course, David Cameron, he can't sort out the health service or education. He can't look after the roads or our children, but he's very big on defence spending, as long as it isn't for equipment, really. But here we are. He was boasting that NATO had to increase its spending, and BBC, true to form, just before the NATO conference gets going, busy boasting that David has signed a 3.5 billion armoured vehicle deal. This is, sorry, I should know the company, General Dynamics, that's it. So this is apparently going to be a big boost for the Welsh economy. We're getting rid of all our heavy armour, is being left in Iraq and Afghanistan and Germany, but he's now going to flood out the British Army with very lightly armoured vehicles. And not surprisingly, Russia today picked up on this. I should imagine the Russians are trembling in their boots at the thought of 600 effectively soft-skinned vehicles. Well, this was the reality of the man. I know we're ramming it home. It's a repeat, it is. But here's David Cameron. Look back for yourselves to see the fact this man has destroyed a huge part of Britain's military capacity, and now he's on the world stage saying, well, of course, we need to spend more.
Lovely.
Back to children.
Children. OK, 12 new victims have contacted the police in Rotherham with regards to the child abuse scandal. Chief Constable David Crompton, you need to remember that name, told Cameron, the Commons Home Affairs Committee, that 62 officers were working on the child sex abuse compared to just 3 back in 2010. And they are conducting 9 multiple victim, multiple offender and investigations, and Rotherham as well, all going on at the same time. So staying with South Yorkshire and staying with South York's Chief Constable, Cliff. Well, Cliff's, actually Chief Constable David Crompton is responding to questions over the raid on Cliff Richard's house. Speaking, I presume, at the same Home Office Select Committee meeting, he told them that his police force had not agreed that the BBC would film the raid from its helicopter, and that South Yorkshire Police felt compelled to give the BBC details of the raid and investigation, as they were concerned that the BBC would run with the story. But Lord Hall, the BBC Director General, told the committee a different story, saying that the police had sent an aerial image of Cliff's place to the BBC so they could identify the building. So who's lying here? Is it the police, South Yorkshire Police, South York's Chief Constable, or is it the BBC? And I'm going to put out how long will it be before the case gets shut down because of all this media attention and what it's doing to poor old Cliff?
Well, of course, they're both lying, and this is the big problem at the moment. Think about it. We've got military, we've got security, we've got armed police, we've got tasers, we've got gas, we've got bullets on the street in Cardiff, all supposedly being organised by police forces at the moment who are showing that they are prepared to utterly lie when it comes to their duty. And of course, never mind protecting adults, they can't protect children. Exactly. If you're a serving policeman or woman and you're feeling a little bit incensed at what we're saying, I'm sorry, it's up to you guys to get back into your organisations and root out the corruption. We know where this is leading, and it's roughly around camps. So, Mr. Travis is set for a retrial.
DLT will be back in court on Friday for a retrial over his historic sex abuse trial. In total, he's going to be standing on 3 charges. 2 are retrials, one of which is an indecent assault and the other sexual assault, and another indecent assault charge. And the case is going to be heard at Southwark Crown Court, where Max Clifford was tried. So we'll probably have more on that after the weekend, and I'll speak to Bill Maloney in the next couple of days and see what he knows and what his thoughts are.
OK, those of a weak disposition, turn away, please.
Please do turn away now. So, war criminal Blair won an award last night from GQ magazine for being the philanthropist.
You've got me going now. He's a good man, philanthropist.
Yes, of the year. And according to the Mail, boos of disbelief came from the crowd. Not only the crowd, but Twitter also. And there's a lovely picture. Look at him, bless him. Here are some of the Twitter posts that I found. These are quite good, actually. Gary Lineker has said Tony Blair has won GQ's Philanthropist of the Year award. Finally, these awards have grasped irony. Philanthropist of the Year is Tony Blair, apparently according to GQ. Just waiting to hear from Hannibal Lecter. So they get better. Just go onto the Mail and you'll find all these tweets. And what one caught your eye, Brian? One of them caught your eye, wasn't it?
This one, really. He's won Philanthropist of the Year at the GQ Awards, seeing off tough competition from Kim Jong-un and ISIS.
Exactly. Well, I actually ended up phoning GQ. I got through to their press office this morning and I asked them who and why did nominate Tony Blair and decide he should won the award. And she said it was a mixture of all the editors, and he's won it because of his charitable work in Africa. So I said, what about the hundreds of thousands of innocent Iraqis that were murdered under the guise of weapons of mass destruction? And with that, she quickly got me off the phone and said she'd pass my comments on to the editors.
So we'd like to say, if you do actually buy GQ magazine, perhaps you might think of not buying it. But there we are.
Exactly.
Well, tweeting, if Tony Blair's at it and Cameron is, we're pleased to say that UK Column is, and I've been enjoying learning how to tweet myself.
Are you doing this yourself, are you?
Or myself, yeah. So we're just reminding, but we have been putting the words down in paper. We've got a corrupt, paedophilic and morally bankrupt Westminster, and it's up to all of us to deal with this situation. We're heading very quickly now into a pretty ruthless dictatorship. This was Lord Jenny Jones here describing Cameron government as vile, oppressive and a plain cruel legislation. Well, we agree with that. Don't forget what happens in those sorts of legislations is innocent people are put in prison, Robert Greene and Melanie Shaw. If we're going to do something about it, we've got to come back to constitutional issues, and that is really under massive attack with what we're seeing in Cardiff alone. But 1st of November, we've got the British Constitution Group conference coming up. And the aim of that this year is not only to be bringing people up to date with what is happening, what the government is trying to do to dismantle our constitution, but of course the positive, what we need to do. So the Saturday is the Constitution event. Sunday, we've got drugthebug.com
Graham Dowling,
looking
amazing.
at health issues, which we know is very, very important. Most people at the moment seem to be feeling that their physical well-being's under attack, and there is a lot you can do to look after yourself.
Yep, self-empowerment. Just a quick announcement, as always, we have more leaflets come out, some BCG ones, stuff on the column, and then obviously the Bradbury Hand leaflets, and the bumper stickers, and the Bradbury Hand T-shirts, as well as many others. So email Carole, CAROLE, at ukcolumn.org if you are any.
Your support greatly appreciated. We're working hard to expand, to increase the number of programme hours we can, video hours we can do each week. So your support allows us to do that. We'd like to thank Nick, who's come on board and is going to be helping out with the production of the programmes. That's going very well. And lastly, I'm going to say, if you've got any concerns about how the country's operating, policing, security, anything of a really serious nature, don't bother with any of the politicians, don't bother with Theresa May. Get on the phone to the Home Office and ask for Emma, because Emma is the lady who's got all the answers. Okay, we hope you're smiling. It's tough times. Do something. Don't sit on your bottoms. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye.